Vreau să mergem mai departe cu un interviu exclusiv și foarte special. Amiralul Rob Bauer, președintele Comitetului Militar al NATO, a acordat un interviu în exclusivitate postului nostru de televiziune. Liderul militar al Alianței Nord Atlantice face afirmații cruciale despre cum poate fi oprit războiul Rusiei din Ucraina și ce amenințări vin în 2025. Este al doilea interviu pe care Amiralul Bauer îl acordă Antena 3 CNN. Urmărim acest interviu realizat de Radu Tudor.
Doamnelor și domnilor, avem privilegiul astăzi al unui nou interviu cu președintele Comitetului Militar al NATO, Amiralul Rob Bauer. Admiral, thank you so much for having this interview and welcome to Romania again.
It's good to see you again.
Admiral Bauer, we are facing big hybrid threats from Russia, all across NATO territory. Romania has annulled presidential elections because of this hybrid threat. How do you assess this threat and are we strong enough to face it?
The fact that the elections are annulled is, of course, a decision of Romania, and the investigation who did this is a discussion within the Romanian government. What we see, however, is that across the alliance as a whole, there is more and more Russian actions, things like airspace violations, disinformation, cyber attacks, even arson, and therefore we have to be very vigilant to make sure that we understand where it comes from, share the information amongst ourselves to make sure that we learn from all these different actions. But basically, we are a strong alliance, and there's a lot of examples of that we are strong and that they're not always very successful in what they're doing. And I've been the victim of this and misinformation myself a number of weeks ago, where the Russian government basically stated that I said something which I hadn't said, and then luckily there was a video of my speech and the answers to a certain question. So it was fairly easy to basically prove it was false, the messaging from the Russian government. But it proves that they are trying, and it also proves that we are strong, and that actually these hybrid actions are not successful. And therefore we have to be very vigilant together to continue to work on this and exchange information amongst each other. The Romanian government has informed the alliance about the situation, so we are kept informed, and I think that's good.
Admiral, during your very appreciated mandate, Russia launched a war in Europe, and not only by herself, but with the help from an Asian country, North Korea, yeah, with some economic help from another Asian country, China, and with a military help from a country in the Middle East, from Iran. Some are tempted to say that this is already World War III. How can we prevent for this war not to expand on NATO territory?
Let me start by saying that NATO is actually very strong at the moment and has become stronger over the last couple of years. We now have 500,000 soldiers on high readiness. We have started with the Allied Response Force. We have strengthened our command and control structure. We have increased our investments. We have increased the number of soldiers that are now at a higher readiness. So in many ways, we have become stronger as an alliance. But the most important reasons why we are doing this is to increase our deterrence, our ability to deter our adversaries. And it is a little bit like the 7-feet bouncer in front of the nightclub. If you want to try to get in without paying, that will probably prevent it. And that is exactly what NATO is doing. And I think there's a good example in Romania as well. The battle group that is here on request of Romania, and that is now being, let's say, run by US, French, Belgian, Luxembourg troops, are helping to increase the deterrence of the Romanian forces and as an alliance as a whole across let's say along the eastern flank. So in many ways, and the same applies for air policing. Over the last years, several allies have supported, augmented the Romanian Air Force with air policing, fighter aircraft. And there's been a mobile air defense radar being sent to Romania to support Romania based on the drone threat that was increasing over the last 2 years. So in many ways, the allies are, and the alliance are assisting Romania as they are assisting a number of other nations. So we are helping each other to become stronger and to be more successful in deterring. Because basically, what we do not want is war. We want to prevent war by being stronger.
Admiral, every one of us wants peace, but Russia wants more war. What is the best solution to bring peace in Ukraine?
As you say, everybody wants peace, and I fully agree with that. But unfortunately, we see in Ukraine that the Russians have actually not achieved any of their strategic goals in the war, which is now in its more than 1,000 days. It passed 1,000 days. And what you see is that the Russians, because they haven't achieved those goals, they are continuing continuously to very high costs, by the way. They have massive numbers of wounded and killed soldiers. And because the Russians continue, Ukraine has to continue to defend itself. And what 50 nations in the world are doing is helping Ukraine with financial help, with lethal aid, weapons and ammunition, and training. So that's not only NATO, it's a much larger group. And that is in line with the UN Charter, because it is allowed to help a nation that is defending itself, and that is what those 50 nations are doing. And it's extremely important we are continuing to do that, because we have to make sure that Ukraine is in the best possible and strongest position if the moment for peace talks is coming, when there is negotiations starting, then we have to make sure that Ukraine is in the best possible position. It's basically peace through strength, as a very famous American politician has said, and to which we all agree. And so in terms of all the efforts that we do together, including within the alliance, is to make sure that we support Ukraine through the NATO assistance, security assistance and training for Ukraine, that is now starting to take over the tasks of the organizations that were doing that until now. So NATO is now going to do that. And that is basically making sure that the training is coordinated, that the delivery of all the weapons is coordinated, that it gets to the border of Ukraine, and that we are looking at the future of the Ukrainian armed forces, that when the war is over, their armed forces are in the best possible position.
Admiral, in the last month, part of this huge Russian hybrid war on Allied territory, it was also the message that NATO wants boots on the ground in Ukraine. What is your evaluation about this message, and what is your analysis about what will happen? Will NATO countries be present from military point of view in Ukraine?
Well, I think the Secretary General has been very clear on this. It's not a wise thing to have NATO troops on the ground in Ukraine, because through that the alliance as a whole would become part of the war, and that is not a good idea. So it's not a decision as one could think if you listen to your question. It's not a decision by NATO to do that. So I think we have to continue to make sure that we help Ukraine in the maximum possible way, to make sure they are, as I said earlier, in the strongest possible position when those negotiations start, through training, through the delivery of weapons and ammunition. We have to continue to do that. because, as I said earlier, if Russia would stop the war today and go home, the war is over. But if Ukraine stops today, they have lost their country. So that is the big difference.
Admiral Bauer, I'm working for a private company, Antena in Romania. You said in a speech 2 weeks ago that private companies on Allied territory should be prepared for war. Should our company, a TV station, private TV station, should be prepared for a war? I made my compulsory, but it was long time ago.
You look fit.
Thank you.
But no, I think it is. It can sound sort of alarming. It is not that I. It's not that I advocate for war. It is actually that I advocate for people to prepare so that we are ready. And the readier we are as a society as a whole, not only the armed forces, but also society as a whole, a strong defense industry, a resilient society that can counter cyber attacks, that can counter disinformation, that can make sure that there's safe water, that there's electricity at all times. All these things are necessary, that there's food, that there's energy. All these things are part of being more resilient. If all of that is stronger, if it is always there, that it is not dependent on one nation.
So not only conventional threat, not only by shaking some guns.
No, absolutely. So what I advocate is societal resilience. It's the whole of society approach. I think it is important that we move away from thinking that security is something for the armed forces and the police. And we have sort of basically outsourced those two tasks to those two organizations, internal and external security. But in the end, it is for us, it is for the people in all those nations. It is for our people. The armed forces are not doing that for themselves. They do it for the population in that nation, for the people. And therefore, if we need to do more, and that is what I'm advocating for, is that we need to do more as a society as a whole to make sure that we are stronger, that we are more resilient. And the more resilient we are, the stronger our deterrence is, and the stronger our deterrence is, the smaller the chance that actually we will have war. Because it's a little bit like a thief going along houses, and when he sees a house with the latest and greatest locks, he will not try to break in that house. He will go to the house with the lesser locks. And the alliance and all the societies in the alliance have to make sure that we have a very strong society, and therefore anyone who thinks about attacking us will think that's not a good idea, I'm not going to win that.
Admiral Bauer, what is the military profile of Romania here, very close to the Russian threat, here on the eastern flank? What is your analysis about our defense posture?
Romania is a very strong ally, and you have been for 20 years. And I think a lot of people in a lot of nations think that they are not doing enough, but all these armed forces and all the contributions of the people to make sure that those armed forces are becoming stronger is an extremely important task for societies as a whole. And I think the nations, including Romania, you can be proud of your armed forces. Of course, we need to do a number of things to improve, because that's also part of the discussion, and we don't have to walk away from that. But for 75 years, this alliance has assured peace in now 32 nations, and that's an amazing achievement. And Romania is part of that family. Romania is now hosting the nations I talked about earlier, the US, France, Belgium, Luxembourg, the nations that send fighter aircraft, the soldiers that are with this mobile radar. It is all part of a combined effort to make Romania stronger, safer, more secure, continued at peace, and I think that is the task we all have.
Admiral Bauer, congratulations for your great mandate and for the award you will receive from USPAN Romania. It's well deserved.
Thank you.
And what is your legacy, Admiral Bauer?
If I've learned anything in the last, well, 43 years, but especially in the last 3.5 years in NATO, is that it is all about trust. This whole alliance is built on trust. The trust that we will help each other. The trust that nations have promised each other that they will even send soldiers to another nation to defend the people in those nations. And that is a very powerful message, that people from Portugal will send soldiers to Poland, or people from Czechia to, or from Canada to Czechia, things like that. So it is a very strong alliance, and that is built on trust. And therefore, I've seen that now in the last 3.5 years, that basically that is happening. We have been extremely strong in our response to the war in Ukraine, united. I think the Russians and also the Chinese have been amazed and astounded by the way NATO has responded to this war. And I think that is to the credit of all of us. And I think for Romania, it is extremely important that the people in Romania realize you will never be alone. There's 31 friends, there's 31 allies that will come to Romania if it is necessary. They are already in Romania, a number, but all of us will help each other wherever in the alliance, including Romania.
Admiral Rob Bauer, Chairman of the NATO Military Committee, thank you so much for this interview.